Celtic Myths and Legends by T.W. Rolleston. Chapter 5, Tales of the Ultonian Cycle. Fergus mac Leda and the Wee Folk. Of the stories of the Ultonian cycle, which do not center on the figure of Cuchulainn, one of the most interesting is that of Fergus mac Leda and the king of the Wee Folk. In this tale, Fergus appears as king of Ulster, but as he was contemporary with Conor mac Nessa, and in the cattle raid of Coagny is represented as following him to war, you must conclude that he was really a sub-king like Cuchulainn or Owen of Fernie. The tale opens in Phelan, or the land of the Wee Folk, a race of elves, presenting an amusing parody of human institutions on a reduced scale, but endowed, like dwarfish people, generally in the literature of primitive races, with magical powers. It updone Ubdan, the king of Phelan, when flushed with wine at a feast, is bragging of the greatness of his power and the invincibility of his armed forces. Have they not the strong man, Glower, who, with his axe, has been known to hew down a thistle at a stroke? But the king's bard, Isert, has heard something of a giant race over sea in a land called Ulster, one man of whom would annihilate a whole battalion of the Wee Folk, and he incautiously allows himself to hint as much to the boastful monarch. He is immediately clapped into prison for his audacity, and only gets free by promising to go immediately to the land of the mighty men and bring back evidence of the truth of his incredible story. So off he goes, and one fine day King Fergus and his lords find at the gate of their dune a tiny little fellow, magnificently clad in the robes of a royal bard, who demands entrance. He is borne in upon the hand of Ada, the king's dwarf and bard, and after charming the court by his wise and witty sayings, and receiving a noble largesse, which he at once distributes among the poets and other court attendants of Ulster, he goes off home, taking with him as a guest the dwarf Ada, before whom the Wee Folk fly, as a Fomorian giant, although, as Isert explains, the average man of Ulster can carry him like a child. Ubdan is now convinced, but Isert puts him under gaish, the bond of chivalry which no Irish chieftain can repudiate without being shamed to go himself, as Isert has done, to the place of Fergus and taste the king's porridge. Ubdan, after he has seen Ada, is much dismayed, but he prepares to go and bids Bebo, his wife, accompany him. You did an ill deed, she says, when you condemned Isert to prison, but surely there is no man under the sun that can make thee hear reason. So off they go, and Ubdan's fairy steed bears them over the sea till they reach Ulster, and by midnight they stand before the king's palace. Let us taste the porridge as we were bound, says Beppo, and make off before daybreak. They steal in and find the porridge pot, to the rim of which Eubdan can only reach by standing on his horse's back. In straining downwards to get at the porridge, he overbalances himself and falls in. There in the thick porridge he sticks fast, and there with Fergus's scallions find him at the break of day, with the faithful Beppo lamenting. They bear him off to Fergus, who is amazed at finding another wee man, with a woman too, in his place. He treats them hospitably, but refuses all appeals to let them go. The story now recounts a spirit of broad humor, several Rabelaisian adventures in which Beppo is concerned, and gives a charming poem supposed to have been uttered by Eubdan in the form of advice to Fergus's fire gilly as to the merits of burning different kinds of timber. The following are extracts. Burn not the sweet apple of drooping branches, of the white blossoms. Burn not the sweet apple of drooping branches, of the white blossoms, to whose gracious head each man puts forth his hand. Burn not the noble willow, the unveiling ornament of poems. Bees drink from its blossoms, all delight in the graceful tent. The delicate airy tree of the Druids, the rowan with its berries, this burn. But avoid the weak tree, burn not the slender hazel. The ash tree of the black buds, burn not. Timber that spreads, the wheel that yields, the rider his switch. The ashen spear is the scale beam of battle. King Fergus and the wee man. At last, the wee folk come in great multitude to beg the release of Eubdan. On the king's refusal, they visit the country with various plagues, snipping off the ears of corn, wheat, kernels, letting the calves suck all the cows dry, defiling the wells, and so forth. But Fergus is up to rate in their quantity as earth entities, Dieterini. They promise to make the plains before the palace of Fergus stand thick with corn every year, without ploughing or sowing. But all is vain. At last, however, Fergus agrees to ransom Eubdan against the best of his fairy treasures. So Eubdan recounts them: the cauldron that can never be emptied, the harp that plays of itself, and finally he mentions a pair of water shoes, wearing which a man can go over or under water as fiercely as on dry land. Fergus accepts the shoes, and Eubdan is released. And Finn's going to find some old men in the forest, and let's remember, in the Goetia and various other texts about what the spirits can grant a person and how some are big, some are small, and how these things are alleged that they have these physical powers, perhaps doing the operations evoke people to do things for themselves, and that's what really goes on. But we are of a different matter than the jinn, so let's not confuse ourselves into thinking that we can just pick up one of our weapons and kill them, or, if we have prowess in dealing with the material world, it may have no effect whatever dealing with such other beings who also have choice, by the way. Humans have their choices, Jinn have their choices.